Well, hello everyone, I'm Dick Kreider with Disciple Land Curriculum, and what we're going to do now is talk about setting up a classroom so it's not only inviting to the kids, but it sets the tone for where you want the kids to go, the flow, and what you want them to do. If your kids walk into a classroom that is just kind of chaotic, they're going to assume that, wow, we get to be chaotic. If they walk into a classroom that they see structure, they're going to understand immediately that not only is my teacher prepared, but this is what they do, this is what we're going to do. And I've discovered that kids really do like it when there's a pattern, when there's a flow, when they can anticipate where they're going to move in different segments of the lesson. Now don't get me wrong, kids like surprises, kids like to do different things, but they really like to know where we're going and what we're going to do. And there's certain learning styles that where they just demand that. And if they don't know that, it's frustrating for them. So as we look at a typical classroom like this one is today, when my students walk into my classroom, they're going to see that there are several things that are laid out for them. They're going to see that we have their disciple guide pages laid out. Everyone has one in front of their seat, in front of their chair. They're going to see that we have the Bible cards laid out, and it's going to have a reproduction of the Bible picture, and then some fun facts on the back, and questions for them to kind of review during the week. Something else that I do is, I take the questions from the review celebration, I type them up, and I have them on a card, and for that particular Sunday, when the kids walk into the classroom, they are going to see a copy of the review questions that they will see in week 13. So everything is pretty much laid out in some kind of order. Now what you don't notice on the tables is you don't notice Bibles and you don't notice pens or pencils. And there's a reason. First reason is kids are required to bring their own Bible into the classroom. And they're going to get some points or some disciple dollars for bringing that Bible and their homework back into the classroom. You don't see pens or pencils sitting on the tables yet, because the first thing kids are going to do, if there's a pen or pencil there, they're going to start doodling on their disciple guide, writing on it, writing notes to friends, etc. So I don't put out the pens and pencils immediately. I wait until we're ready to utilize that disciple guide. Then they get the pen, then they get the pencil. Beyond that, it's pretty tough to handle or stop what's going to happen. So when my kids, walk into my classroom, they come in and they're going to look at this table right here. And on this table will be the objects that they have seen previously that were used to trigger their memories about the scripture verse that they had learned. You'll notice that there are several things out on the table, so that means we've had multiple verses already during this quarter. But this allows them to come into the room through the door, and instead of getting wild and crazy, they come over here and cooperatively, they reteach each other the memory verses. The memory verses themselves have been printed out on cards, and they are way over here on another wall. And you can see that I have all of the memory verses for each of the lessons on the wall. If someone has memorized one or two verses and they want to skip ahead, they can skip ahead and continue to learn. So now when my kids walk in through the door, I'm going to greet them, just be friendly and cordial to them, have a lot of fun. Maybe as they walk in the door, ask them about their week. They get to come and begin to review their lesson. When I am ready to begin, I ask my kids to take their seat. They take their seats, and the first thing we do in my classroom is I ask them, which of you memorized the verse for today? They raise their hand. If they can say the memory verse, I give them a disciple dollar. Then I ask them, how many of you returned with the previous week disciple guide page completed? If they came into my classroom and they've completed that and they have brought their own Bible, they get a second disciple dollar. If my kids have logged on to their website called disciplezone.com, logged on, gone to the lesson, and completed the things that are suggested for them there, most importantly what we call sword work. Sword work is their Bible reading for that week. So if they tell me, and I trust them, if they tell me that they've read it, they get a third disciple dollar. The kids are responsible for accumulating and taking care of their disciple dollars. If they come in and they say, Mr. Dick, I lost my disciple dollars, I'm going to say back to them, that's not my problem. You need to become responsible. So that's the way we kind of handle it in the classroom. So we've welcomed each other. We've done our memory verse. We've done our disciple dollars. We found out what everyone did during the week. Now it's time for me to begin my lesson. When I begin that lesson, I may reach back and I may grab a prop that I'm going to use, and the kids are wondering, what has he got that in his hand for? So I will utilize this prop during this lesson, maybe 1, 2, 3 times. And I try to keep it in front of them so that they know what I'm going to do. Now, soon after I introduce today's lesson, I almost always will guide my children and the kids in my class up to the teaching pictures on the wall. Because that's where I can do a very quick review of what they've learned. Why do I do that? Because kids need that repetition. And then secondly, I may have had 2 or 3 students who couldn't be there the previous Sunday, so they get to see the flow. And when I do the very last Sunday prior to today, then I'm going to take a few more minutes and recap what we did that previous Sunday. When they come into the classroom, you can see that everything is pretty much in a set order for them, and they're comfortable with that. There are going to be things that jog their memory from previous weeks. You'll also notice that on the whiteboard here that I have the title of the lesson, and I will begin to put the knowledge, the character, and the conduct that we want to develop in our kids this week. Now the reason I happen to put this here is because I have a tendency to chase rabbits. So having this up here reminds me. You might notice on this wall over here that we have a timeline that the kids have worked on throughout the quarter. Kids like big things like this. They like things that they can come up to and write on. So you notice that in the classroom, there are a lot of visuals. There are a lot of things for them to look at, but the purpose of these things is simply to remind them what we're about and what we are doing in our classroom. Now, I personally come into the classroom and I try to have just a sheet of paper and my Bible in the classroom with me. I try not to utilize my teacher guide more than necessary, but I'll have a sheet of paper, and on that sheet of paper, I've listed the flow of my lesson for the day. That also keeps me, in touch. Makes me aware of where we're going and what we're supposed to be doing. Now, let's assume that we have come to the 13th lesson in a unit. The 13th lesson in every unit in the Disciple Land material is a review. If you're teaching preschoolers, it's going to be a review of a particular lesson. But if you're teaching kindergarten or elementary, this review celebration could be done as a game, or it could be done as, well, in my case, frequently I do it as a test. And on that 13th Sunday when my kids come in, the classroom will look very different. The classroom will actually have the questions for our review celebration laid out on the table and fun things for the day. I almost always bring some refreshments. I will have streamers hanging from the ceiling, and I will have crepe paper all over the room. And I want it to look festive. I want them to say, almost party time. Because I don't want the review celebration to be like, oh, we have to do review celebration. I want them to walk in and say, all right, review celebration. During the review celebration, we'll either play a game or we will do my test. And they have an opportunity to earn additional disciple dollars. Now, I want to come back to something called the Disciple Guide. This Disciple Guide is going to offer you the opportunity to involve your kids reading the scriptures and doing something after they read the scriptures. You'll notice that there are 1, 2, and 3 pages for them to do in the class. I almost always try to do those 3 pages. The 4th page is reserved for them to do at home. Again, if they do this 4th page, they bring it back with their own personal Bible, then they get a Disciple Dollar. Now, what I'd like to just kind of wrap this up with saying is that I think that order is a good thing to have in a classroom. I think the order is good to have in the classroom, again, because it reminds you where we're going and reminds our kids where we're going. But I also believe that the room needs to be decorated. It needs to have colors in it. It needs to have lots of things that are going to trigger the kids' imagination and their memory of what we've done, that prepares them for what we're doing today. When you set up your classroom, don't let it be dull. Make it exciting. Make it something that you can be enthused about and your kids can be enthused about.